Torah portion, Vayotqabtsu then. So, last Torah portion I was going through elements of the gospel and continue to do that in this one. Vayotqabtsu means and they gathered. Last time I said that the Torah portion Vayomer meant and I can't remember what it was, and it began or something like that. But it doesn't. Vayomer means and he spoke. And it's talking about Yehovah speaking. So it was and he spoke. Here you can see something similar. When you have the Vav, it's and. The Yod is usually he. I'm going to make an assumption here. With it being Yot, and Ot being the feminine plural, it becomes they and they. And then kabzus from the verb that means to gather. So last time it was and he spoke. This time it's and they gathered. Joshua 9:1 says, it came to be when all the kings who were beyond the Jordan, I think that was the name of the first one actually, and it came to be. Maybe I pulled it from the wrong place. When all the kings who were beyond the Jordan in the hills and in the low country and in all the coasts of the great sea towards Lebanon, the Hittite and the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Hivite and the Jebusite heard, they gathered together to fight with Yehoshua and Yisrael with one accord. Okay, so remembering that Joshua is a picture of Yeshua, this is seen with Yeshua as well, because Joshua is leading them into the land, just as Yeshua will lead us into the land when he returns. And we've got all of these kings who are all gathered against Joshua and against Israel. In Revelation 19 verse 19 it says, and I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to fight him who sat on the horse and his army. Okay, so all of this has transitioned from being in the physical realm with Joshua to being in the spiritual realm. The beast's a spiritual entity. We've got the kings of the earth. Kings and princes throughout Scripture are spiritual entities. By the time we get to the end and all of the prophecies at the end, we're dealing with spiritual battles that take place. We see things like horsemen and chariots, and we see, swords and antiquated weaponry for the physical realm. But we see these things in the battles at the end. And people will take those things and they'll say, well, actually what they must be is a sword, is a gun, and a chariot, is a tank, or, whatever. And they make it all modern warfare stuff. But actually, we see with Elisha's servant, when he sees into the spirit realm, he looks around him and he sees horses and chariots, and that's what the spiritual realm looks like. So when we see those things at the time of the end, that's what it's talking about. So this is a battle in the spiritual realm. We've got Yeshua and his army. So who are Yeshua's army? Well, they are the host of heaven. That's what we're told, or the army of heaven. So this is the angels that he comes with. So Joshua and Israel are a picture of Yeshua and the angels in their spiritual battle when Yeshua returns. Verse 3 says, and the inhabitants of Givon heard what Yehoshua had done to Jericho and Ai, and they acted slyly and went and pretended to be envoys. And they took old sacks on their donkeys, old wineskins, torn and mended, which should remind us of something that Yeshua said. And we'll look at that. And old and patched sandals on their feet, and old garments on themselves, and all the bread of their provision was dry. It was crumbs. And they went to Yehoshua, to the camp at Gilgal, and they said to him and to the men of Israel, we have come from a far land, and now make a covenant with us. So those who are afar off are the Gentiles in Scripture. So we've got something that we can compare with Rahab. When Rahab came, she had heard how Yehovah had parted the sea, And she'd heard what had happened to Israel's enemies as well. But she believed in the name of Yahovah. She trusted. Here we've got these people that we can compare. They act slyly and they're pretending. Okay, this information about the old wineskins, the bread of their provision was dry. We'll look at that. But they say, come and make a covenant with us. But they have fooled Yahushua. They've lied to him. So Luke 5:27-39 says, and after this, he went out and saw a tax collector named Levi sitting at the tax office, and he said to him, follow me. And he, having left all, rose up and he followed him. And Levi made a great feast for him in his house, and there were a great number of tax collectors and others who sat down with them. So we've got Levi here. He's one of Yeshua's disciples, and he left everything to follow after him. The Pharisees and their scribes grumbled against his disciples, saying, why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners? And Yeshua answering said to them, those who are well do not need a physician, but those who are sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. And all the way from John the Baptist onwards, we have this call for repentance, to turn back to the kingdom, basically. So Yeshua says, look, I haven't come to call the righteous, I've come to call the sinners. They're the ones. And we remember that when he speaks his parable where he's talking about the old wineskins in a second. And they said to him, why do the disciples of Yochanan fast often and make prayers? And likewise those of the Pharisees, but yours eat and drink. And he said to them, are you able to make the friends of the bridegroom fast while the bridegroom is with them? In the Gospel of Mark, of course, it says they are unable to fast, or they cannot fast when the bridegroom is with them. But days shall come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, then they shall fast in those days. So today is Yom Kippur, and we're all fasting. Okay, it's something to consider, though, that Yeshua said after he had gone, his disciples would fast. Not just on Yom Kippur, it's something that would happen fairly regularly. So if it's not something that you do more often than just this one day a year, perhaps it's worth considering whether you want to do smaller fasts, maybe fasts for until it's dark or whatever. A day's fast, 3 days fast, whatever it is, it's something to consider. Whether you want to fast or not is entirely up to you, but don't let it become a matter of stubbornness in your heart where you reject it and you say, I will not fast. And he also spoke a parable to them. No one puts a piece from a fresh garment on an old one, because the fresh one makes a tear, and also the piece that was taken out of the fresh one doesn't match the old. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins, otherwise the new wine shall burst the wineskins and run out, and the wineskin shall be ruined. But the new wine is put into fresh wineskins, and both are preserved. And no one, having drunk old wine, immediately desires new wine, for he says, the old is better. So what's he talking about here? He's saying if you take something which is new and you try to patch that which is old with it, it won't work and it will make the situation worse. Think about these men who have come to Yahushua, and they come with the wineskins that have been torn and mended, and they've lied to him, and they've said, make a covenant with us. Okay? For us, we are to crucify the old man. We're to put that to death, and we are to be new creations. Okay? If you try to patch the old man with the new, you try to take some doctrine out of the scriptures and just patch the old man with it, that doesn't work. In fact, it will make the situation worse. Hebrews 8:6-9 says, but now he has obtained a more excellent service, inasmuch as he is also mediator of a better covenant, which was constituted on better promises. From John the Baptist, what was preached was this repentance, that they could turn back and be a part of the kingdom. And these better promises are the repentance of the people. Because the first people said, yep, you've rescued us from Egypt, we're here, we'll do what you say. But of course they didn't do what Yehovah said. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then no place would have been sought for a second. For finding fault with them, with the people, he says, see, the days are coming, says Yehovah, when I shall conclude with the house of Israel and with the house of Yehudah a new covenant, which of course began when Yeshua died. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Mitzrayim, because they did not continue in my covenant, and I disregarded them, says Yehovah. Okay, so now when people come to Yehovah, they're to come in repentance. They're to have his laws in their inward parts, in their mind and in their hearts. Romans 6 verse 4, we were therefore buried with him through immersion into death, that as Messiah was raised from the dead by the esteem of the Father, so also we should walk in the newness of life. That's an entire thing. We're not taking the old man and putting loads of patches on him and being like, yep, I do Yom Kippur and I keep the Sabbath now and I do this and I do that. That's all patches. What is required is that the old man is entirely put to death and we're raised to a new life. Psalm 78:36-37 says, but they flattered him with their mouth and they lied to him with their tongue. For their heart was not steadfast with him. They were not true to his covenant. This is like these people who are coming to Yehoshua at this point. They acted slyly and they said, make a covenant with us. And we've got this picture that Yeshua uses as a parable. And he says, no, you can't have the old wineskins that are torn and mended. So the inhabitants of Givon heard what Yehoshua had done to Jericho and Ai. And they acted slyly and went and pretended to be envoys. And they took old sacks on their donkeys, old wineskins torn and mended, and old and patched sandals on their feet and old garments on themselves. And all the bread of their provision was dry. We're given a few things by which we know the word. The bread is related to the word, or the word is related to bread. It's like bread. The bread of their provision was dry though, okay? We've got this picture of the old wineskins just being torn and mended. Their bread was dry, because we're not just to have the bread of the word, we're also to wash in the water of the word, okay? We are to become new. And they went to Yehoshua, to the camp of Gilgal, and said to him and to the men of Israel, we've come from a far land, and now make a covenant with us. And as it turns out, that is actually a lie. They haven't come from a far land, and that is important in this narrative. And Exodus 23:31-33 says, and I shall set your border from the Sea of Reeds to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness to the river, for I shall give the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and I shall drive them out before you. Do not make a covenant with them, nor with their gods. So they say, we've come from a far land. We don't dwell in this land, because if they dwelt in that land, Israel wouldn't be able to make a covenant with them. Let them not dwell in your land, lest they make you sin against me when you serve their gods, when it becomes a snare to you. Also in Exodus 34, guard what I command you today. See, I am driving out from before you the Amorite, the Canaanite, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite. Guard yourself, lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land where you are going, lest it be a snare in your midst. Remember that phrase, in your midst. If they were dwelling in their midst, they wouldn't be able to make a covenant with them. But the men of Israel said to the Hivites, it could be that you dwell in our midst. So how would we make a covenant with you? And they said to Yehoshua, we are your servants. And Yehoshua said to them, who are you and where do you come from? And they said to him, from a land very far off, your servants have come because of the name of Yehovah, your Elohim, for we heard the report of him and all that he did in Mitzrayim. Okay, but they're lying in this. We came because of this. They did come because they heard what the enemies had done. But they didn't come from a land afar off. They were dealing treacherously with them. And all they had done to the two kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sichon, king of Heshbon, and Og, king of Bashan, who is at Ashtaroth. Matthew 13, Yeshua says this, the disciples come to him and said to him, why do you speak to them in parables? And he answering said to them, because it has been given to you to know the secrets of the reign of the heavens, or the kingdom of the heavens, but to them it has not been given. For whoever possesses, to him more shall be given, and he shall have overflowingly. But whoever does not possess, even what he possesses shall be taken away from him. So it's been given to you to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven. So if you know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, more will be given to you. If you don't, even the bits, the scraps that you can get, the new patches that you can put on yourself will be taken away. Because of this, I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. And in them the prophecy of Yeshayahu is fulfilled, which says, hearing you shall hear and by no means understand, and seeing you shall see and by no means perceive. For the heart of this people has become thickened, and their ears are hard of hearing, their eyes they have closed, lest, this is the bit that he doesn't want, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their heart and turn back, and I heal them. Or as it says in the Gospel of Mark, that their sins will be forgiven. That's what Yeshua doesn't want. He says they're blind, their hearts have become thickened, they've closed their eyes so that they don't understand and turn, and I will forgive them. Because it's just like these people who've heard what Yehovah has done to the enemies, and they don't want that done to them. But they're not prepared to come and to be truthful and to turn to Yehovah. They're not prepared to do that. They're just trying to avoid the bad thing. They don't want the enemies, they don't want to be destroyed like Israel's other enemies. So Yeshua says these people are no good. It continues, so our elders and all the inhabitants of our land spoke to us, saying, take food with you for the journey and go to meet them, and say to them, we are your servants, and now make a covenant with us. This bread of ours we took hot for our provision from our houses on the day that we left to come to you, but now see, it is dry and it is crumbly. This reminds me of how people are. They think, if I can just provide enough for myself, I'll be okay. These wineskins which we filled were new, and see, they are torn. And these our garments and our sandals have become old because of the very long journey. It tells us in the word, of course, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. But it tells us that death entered into creation because Adam sinned, because man sinned. But all sinned, so death came upon all. So in all of our journeys, all of us have sinned. We have become old. Our garments, the wineskins in the parable have become old. The men of Israel took some of their food, but they did not ask the mouth of Yehovah. Remembering, of course, at this time that they could have gone to Pinchas, and he could have inquired of Yehovah directly for them. But for us, we can also inquire of the mouth of Yehovah, very simply. What does the mouth of Yehovah speak? It speaks his word. So we can now, and they didn't have his word like we have. but we can now inquire of the mouth of Yehovah. And Yehoshua made peace with them and made a covenant with them to let them live, and the rulers of the congregation swore to them. And it came to be at the end of 3 days, after they had made a covenant with them, they heard that they were their neighbors who dwelt near them. So they knew these people are people with whom we cannot make a covenant, but we already have. The children of Israel set out and came to their cities on the 3rd day. Again, we've got this second mention here at the number 3, the 3rd day in particular. Now their cities were Givon and Kephirah and Be'eroth and Kiriath Yearim. But the children of Israel did not smite them, because the rulers of the congregation had sworn to them by Yehovah. Remember that the Nasi, people who were Nasis, Nasieh, they were the rulers of thousands, the rulers of hundreds, the rulers of 50s within each one of the tribes. And these are the people who have sworn to these men of Givon, the Givonites, by Yehovah Elohim of Israel, and all the congregation grumbled against the rulers. So the rulers have said, no, we've sworn to them, and all the congregation are saying, well, they're grumbling against them. All the rulers said to all the congregation, we've sworn to them by the Yehovah Elohim of Israel, and we are unable to touch them now. Let us do this to them. We shall keep them alive, lest wrath be upon us because of the oath which we swore to them. So ask yourself, think about it. What's more important? That they keep the Torah, to not make a covenant with the people of the land, or to abide by an oath that they have made to them by the name of Yehovah? If we consider 2 Samuel 21, we get our answer. There was a scarcity of food in the days of David for 3 years, year after year, and David sought the face of Yehovah, and Yehovah answered because of Shaul in his bloodthirsty house, because he killed the Givonites. Okay, so these are the people that the oath has been made with. Saul came along and he killed them. He rid the land of them, which you could say that the Torah says to do. But there's a scarcity of food, a famine in the land for 3 years for a punishment, because this oath that had been made with them had been broken. The king therefore called the Givonites and spoke to them. Now the Givonites were not of the children of Israel, but of the remnant of the Amorites. And the children of Israel had sworn protection to them, but Shaul had sought to kill them in his zeal for the children of Israel and Yehudah. So this is this oath that we're talking about now. Saul broke it. So David said to the Givonites, what should I do for you? And with what do I make atonement that you shall bless the inheritance of Yehovah? And the Givonites said to him, it is no matter of silver or gold between us and Shaul or his house. Neither is it for us to put to death any man in Israel. And he said, whatever you say, I do for you. And they said to the king, the man who consumed us and plotted against us, that we should be destroyed from remaining in the border of Israel, let 7 men of his sons be given to us, and we shall hang them before Yehovah in Givah of Shaul, whom Yehovah chose. And the king said, I give them. So this is what was necessary for Saul going against the oath that had been made. The rulers said to them, let them live, and let woodcutters be drawers of water for the congregation. Let them be woodcutters and drawers of water for the congregation, as the rulers had promised them. Okay, so the tabernacle or the temple needed wood to be burnt for the altars. This is the people who will provide it. After Judah went into captivity in Babylon, we see the people coming out, and then the people deciding among themselves who would be the people to bring the wood. Then Yehoshua called for them, and he spoke to them, saying, Why have you deceived us, saying, we are very far from you, yet you are dwelling in our midst? And now you are cursed, and you shall not cease from being slaves and woodcutters and drawers of water for the house of my Elohim. So they've come to advantage themselves, and they've come and they've lied. But Yehovah uses all things for good. Okay, they might have thought, we've done it, we've entered into covenant, but we've lied about it. We're okay. Just like people today might come as old wineskins that they've tried to patch with the new and think we're in covenant, we're okay. And they answered Yahushua and said, your servants were clearly told that Yehovah, your Elohim, commanded his servant Moshe to give you all the land and to destroy all the inhabitants of the land from before you. So we were much afraid for our lives because of you and have done this deed. But as Yeshua said, he doesn't want these people to come to him and to turn and be healed, for their sins to be forgiven just because they fear being destroyed. This is not good what these people have done. Now see, we are in your hands. Do with us as it seems good and right to you to do to us. And he did so to them and delivered them out of the hand of the children of Israel, and they did not kill them. And that day Yahushua made them woodcutters and drawers of water for the congregation and for the altar of Yehovah, even to this day at the place that he should choose. So, okay, we're not going to kill you. We've made an oath with you, so we cannot kill you. We've sworn this oath by the name of Yehovah, but this will be your end. We know all matters work together for good to those who love Elohim, to those who are called according to his purpose. And I've seen it before where people will think, I'm in covenant with Yehovah. Everything's okay. I'm one of his people. I'm being blessed by Yehovah as being a part of this. Yehovah will use such people for his end. Okay, people who are deceitful, he will use for his purposes. People think that they can kind of fool Yeshua, fool Yehovah, like they fooled the man, Yahushua. It came to be when Adonizedek, king of Yerushalayim, heard that Yahushua had captured Ai and had put it under the ban, that he had done to Ai and its king, as he had done to Jericho and its king, and that the inhabitants of Givon had made peace with Israel and were in their midst. And they feared greatly because Givon was a great city, as one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and all its men were mighty. And Adonizedek, king of Yerushalayim, sent to Hoham, king of Hebron, and to Piram, king of Yarmuth, and to Yaphiah, king of Lachish, and to Devir, king of Eglon, saying, come up to me and help me, and let us smite Givon, for it has made peace with Yahushua and with the children of Israel. So the 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Yerushalayim, the king of Hebron, the king of Yarmuth, the king of Lachish, the king of Eglon, gathered together and went up, they and all their armies, and camped before Givon, and they fought against it. And the men of Givon sent to Yahushua at the camp of Gilgal, saying, do not withdraw your hand from your servants. Come up to us quickly and save us. Help us, or deliver us, help us. For all the kings of the Amorites who dwell in the mountains have assembled against us. And Yahushua went up from Gilgal, he and all the soldiers with him, and all the mighty brave men. And Yehovah said to Yahushua, do not fear them, for I have given them into your hand. Not one of them does stand before you. So again, Yehovah is with them when they're going to protect the men of Givon, as they have sworn to do. So then Yahushua came upon them suddenly, having gone up all night from Gilgal. And Yehovah threw them into confusion before Israel, and they smote them with a great slaughter at Givon, and pursued them along the way that goes to Beth Horon, and smote them as far as Azekah and Makedah. And it came to be as they fled before Yisrael and were on the descent of Beth Horon, that Yehovah threw down large hailstones from the heavens on them as far as Azekah, and they died. There were more who died from the hailstones than those that the sons of Israel had slain with the sword. We see hailstones being used by Yehovah to supernaturally smite the men of the earth throughout Scripture. We saw it in the book of Exodus. Then Moshe stretched out his rod towards the heavens, and Yehovah sent thunder, and hail and fire came down to the earth, and Yehovah rained hail on the land of Mitzrayim. And thus there came to be hail and fire flashing continually in the midst of the hail, very heavy, such as had not been in the land of Mitzrayim since it became a nation. And the hail smote all in the land of Mitzrayim, all the Mitzrites, those who were the enemies of Israel. All that was in the field, both man and beast, and the hail smote every plant of the field and broke every tree of the field. And we're going to see this as we continue in this part. We're going to see that Yehovah provides deliverance. He provides salvation to his people from their enemies, and he does so supernaturally. Here we also see in Revelation 8:7, the first angel sounded, and there came to be hail and fire mixed with blood. Okay, so this is the trumpets, the trumpet judgments on the earth. Yehovah sends hail and fire to smite those on the earth again. In Revelation 11:19, the dwelling place of Elohim was open in the heaven, and the Ark of the Covenant was seen in his dwelling place. Okay, pointing us to this very day fulfilled in the heavenly realm, to Yom Kippur. And there came to be lightnings and voices and thunders and an earthquake, and again, great hail on the earth. In Revelation 19, we see that great hail from heaven fell on man, and every hailstone was about the weight of a talent. Think about it hailing just normally and being out in the hail and it being, it'll sting your skin if you get hit by hail. Imagine hailstones the size of talents battering the earth. And still men blasphemed Elohim for the plague of the hail. So we've got one reaction of men here, this supernatural thing that is being done by Elohim, the hail being sent. You've got some people who take the supernatural things that Elohim does one way, and you've got some people who, even in the face of this, they're blaspheming Elohim for the plague of hail. So they're blaming him for it, but they do not turn at this. Then Yahushua spoke to Yehovah in the day when Yehovah gave the Amorites over to the children of Israel, and he said before the eyes of Israel, "Sun, stand still over Givon and moon in the valley of Ayalon." So the sun stood still and the moon stopped till the nation avenged itself on its enemies. Is this not written in the book of Yashar? Thus the sun stopped in the midst of the heavens and did not hasten to go down for an entire day. And it's become something that people do. It's become something popular when considering this verse, that people start to come up with all sorts of ideas about the nature of reality or of the universe or how things work in the universe because of this. Because Joshua commanded and the sun stopped in the midst of the heavens and the moon. Because of this, they come up with ideas. But that's not what this verse is to tell us. That's not what this verse is about. This is about Yehovah doing something supernatural in order to bring salvation to his people, to bring deliverance to his people. And we see this all the way through Scripture. Such things do not teach us anything about the nature of reality. Mark 11:22-23, Yeshua answering said to them, "Have belief in Elohim. For truly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be removed and thrown into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, like Joshua, sun, moon, stand still, does not doubt in his heart, but believes what he says shall be done, he shall have whatever he says. Okay, it doesn't teach us anything about the nature of reality. It doesn't teach us anything about the nature of mountains. John 2:7-9. Yeshua said to them, fill the water jugs with water. And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, now draw out and take it to the master of the feast. So they took it. But when the master of the feast had tasted the water that had become wine, so the master of the feast sees that the water that was in the water jugs has now become wine. Doesn't teach us anything about water and its ability to become wine, or the physical nature of anything in reality. Doesn't teach us about that, and that's not what it's to teach us about. These signs were to show that Yeshua was the Messiah, that he would bring salvation. John 6:9. When they had rowed about 5 or 6 kilometers, they saw Yeshua walking on the sea and coming near the boat, and they were afraid. They saw him walking on the sea. Doesn't teach us anything about the sea. It teaches us about Yehovah. That's what all of these things are to teach us about. Habakkuk 3:9-13 says, you uncover your bow, the oaths of the rod of the word, Selah. You cut through the earth with rivers. The mountains shall see you, they tremble. The storm of water shall pass over. The deep shall give its voice. It shall lift up its hand. So this is about the immense power of Elohim when he comes in judgment. Sun, moon, stand still in their places. Like light your arrows fly, like lightning your glittering spear. You step through the earth in rage, you thresh the Gentiles in wrath. You shall go forth to save your people, to save your anointed. Again, Yehovah's supernatural works showing us that he is capable of bringing salvation to us. And we'll look at this more as we go through this, that this is what these supernatural works are to show us, that Yehovah is capable of doing what he has promised. To save your anointed, you shall smite the head from the house of the wrong by laying bare from foundation to neck. Selah. 2 Kings 6:5-6. It came to be as one was cutting down a tree that the iron axe head fell into the water. And he cried out and said, "Oh, my master," for it was borrowed. And the man of Elohim said, "Where did it fall?" And he showed him the place, and he cut off a stick and threw it in there, and he made the iron to float. This tells us nothing about iron and its physical properties or the laws of physics as they pertain to iron. What this tells us about is Elohim's great power. And this is a sign that he is with this man of Elohim. Genesis 19:26, Lot's wife looked back and she became a post of salt. Okay, that's impossible, isn't it? Just like the sun and the moon stopping in the sky would be impossible. She became a post of salt. Chizkiyahu said to Yeshayahu, "What is the sign that Yehovah does heal me?" Okay, this is salvation talk here, being healed, as Yeshua in one gospel account says, "And I healed them," and in the other gospel account says that they will be, I will forgive their sins. So what is the sign that Yehovah does heal me? Because Yehovah gives us these signs to show us that he is capable of delivering us from our enemies. And that I shall go up to the house of Yehovah. What day? The third day. And Yeshayahu said, "This is the sign for you from Yehovah. The Yehovah does the word which he has spoken. Shall the shadow go forward 10 degrees or go back 10 degrees? And Chizkiyahu said it would be easy for the shadow to go down 10 degrees, because that's what it would naturally do on the sundial. No, but let the shadow go backward 10 degrees. And Yeshayahu the prophet cried out to Yehovah, and he brought the shadow 10 degrees backward, by which it had gone down on the sundial of Achaz. Doesn't mean that even anything has been changed in relationship between the earth and the sun. What he did is he made the shadow go back. These things don't teach us anything apart from Yehovah's power to do what he has promised. What is the sign that Yehovah will heal me? Okay, he went up on the third day. This is to do with the gospel. And supernaturally, he gives a sign that he will be healed, just as Yehovah has given us a sign that we will be healed. 2 Kings 4:38-41. And Elisha returned to Gilgal, and the scarcity of food was in the land, another famine. And the sons of the prophets were sitting before him. And he said to his servant, put on the large pot and cook stew for the sons of the prophets. And one went out to the field to gather plants and found a wild vine and gathered wild cucumbers from it, filling the skirt of his garment, and came and sliced them into the pot of stew, though they did not know what they were. They then served it to the men to eat. And it came to be as they were eating the stew that they cried out and said, O man of Elohim, there is death in the pot. This is poisonous. And they were unable to eat it. And he said, then bring some flour. And he put it into the pot and said, serve it to the people to eat. And there was no evil matter in the pot. What does he say? There's death in the pot. Then this supernatural sign is given to show us, again, the gospel account, okay, from death, life. This sign that Yehovah is capable of doing the things that he's promised. That's what these miracles and these signs all show us throughout the book, throughout the scriptures, rather. Genesis 15:4-6 said, and see, the word of Yehovah came to him, saying, this one is not your heir, but he who comes from your own body is your heir. And he brought him outside and said, look now toward the heavens and count the stars if you are able to count them. And he said to him, so are your seed. And he believed in Yehovah, and he reckoned it to him as righteousness. Okay, so he believed in Yehovah. Again, this is part of the gospel. But listen to how these events are described in the book of Hebrews. By belief also, Sarah herself was enabled to conceive seed, and she bore a child when she was past the normal age, because she deemed him trustworthy who had promised. Again, these things are to show us that Elohim is able to do the things that he's promised. And so from one, what does it say about Abraham? From one as good as dead. That's an interesting phrase, isn't it? From one who was as good as dead. From death, he brought life. We're born as numerous as the stars of the heaven, as countless as the sand which is by the seashore. In belief, all these died, not having received the promises, but seeing them from a distance. Same is true for us. Seeing them from a distance, they welcomed and embraced them because they knew that Elohim was faithful to do what he had promised. And they confessed that they were aliens and strangers on the earth. For those who speak this way make it clear that they seek a fatherland. And yet if they had indeed kept remembering that place from which they had come out, they would have had the chance to return. We're in a similar situation. When Yeshua can't do the miracles, it's because the people don't believe. Okay, because they are of no belief. What does he say about moving the mountain? He says, if you believe in your heart, then it will be done to you. Part of the gospel is that we must believe that Elohim is capable of doing what he has promised to do. And he's given us multiple signs that he is. But now they long for a better place that is a heavenly. Therefore, Elohim is not ashamed to be called their Elohim, for he has prepared a city for them. In 2 Kings 4:1-7, a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha, saying, your servant, my husband, again, is dead. We've got death being the problem here. And you know that your servant feared Yehovah, and the lender has come to take my 2 sons to be his slaves. And Elisha said, what should I do for you? Inform me. What do you have in your house? And she said, your female servant has none at all in her house except a pot of oil. And he said, go borrow vessels from everywhere, from all your neighbors, empty vessels, and do not get a few. When you have come in, you shall shut the door behind you and your sons, and pour it into those vessels, and set aside the filled ones. So she went from him and shut the door behind her and her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured it out. And it came to be, when the vessels were filled, that she said to her son, bring me another vessel. But he said to her, there is not another vessel. And at that point, the oil ceased. So she went and informed the man of Elohim, and he said, go sell the oil and pay your debt. Like Yeshua paid our ransom to rescue us from death. You and your sons live on the rest. So you and your sons shall live on. They will live. You and your sons shall live. Husband was dead. That's what was causing the situation. They had a debt that they couldn't pay. And so Yehovah is showing us through this that he can supernaturally pay the debt, and you and your son shall live on, so to speak. Exodus 14:19-22. The angel of Elohim who went before the camp of Israel moved and went behind them, and the column of cloud went from before them and stood behind them, and came between the camp of the Mitzrites and the camp of Israel. And it was the cloud and the darkness, and it gave light by night, and one did not come near the other all the night. And Moshe stretched out his hand over the sea, and Yehovah caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea into dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, and the waters were a wall to them on their right and on their left. So they had the enemy at their back, and Yehovah, again, by something supernatural, is showing them that he is able to deliver them from the enemy. It's even what he says, isn't it? Stand back and see the deliverance of Yehovah. Numbers 22, what Moshe says. Numbers 22, verse 28. Then Yehovah opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, what have I done to you that you have beaten me these 3 times? Okay, so Yehovah does a supernatural work here. But what is he doing? We've got the number 3. Okay, pointing us possibly to something to do with the gospel. You've beaten me these 3 times. The angel says that the donkey saw me, turned aside from me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, I certainly would have killed you by now. So we've got the number 3, we've got a supernatural sign, and we've got Balaam being delivered, saved from death. Daniel 5:5-6. At that moment, the fingers of a man's hand appeared and wrote opposite the lampstand on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. The king's color changed, and his thoughts alarmed him, so that the joints of his hips were loosened and his knees knocked against each other. Okay, so again, we've got Yehovah who shows this great power to an enemy. Just as in Exodus 7, verse 10. So Moshe and Aharon went into Pharaoh, and they did so as Yehovah commanded. And Aharon threw his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. Again, Yehovah demonstrating his power to deliver us from the enemy. And remember, this was one of 3 signs that Aharon did. Numbers 16:32. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up with their households and all the men with Korach, with all their goods. Again, Yehovah does something impossible according to how we understand the laws of physics, how we understand the earth. But Yehovah acts, he splits the earth open, and they all fall down, the enemies, and are consumed. Numbers 17, verse 8. It came to be on the next day that Moshe went into the tent of witness and saw that the rod of Aharon of the house of Levi had budded, brought forth buds, and blossomed, and bore ripe almonds. Again, supernatural sign. You've got life coming from death. Something that's impossible, the Yehovah does, not to teach us anything about rods and their ability to bud almond blossoms, rather to teach us that he is capable of doing whatsoever he wills. Jonah, Yehovah appointed a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the stomach of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. And this is the sign that is given to the people, the sign of Jonah. And that's what we're going to look at as we come to a close. The sign of Jonah. 3 days, 3 nights. Jonah would have been killed. If a giant fish swallows you, you're dead. Okay, you're going to be dissolved in the fish's stomach acid. So Romans 10, 8-15 tells us, what does it say? The word is near you, in your mouth and in your heart. That is the word of belief which we are proclaiming. That if you confess with your mouth the Master Yeshua, believe in your heart that Elohim has raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. It's necessary for us to believe that. It's necessary for us to believe that for a specific reason, which we'll come to. For with the heart one believes unto righteousness, and one confesses with the mouth, and so is saved. Because the scripture says, whoever puts his trust in him shall not be put to shame. Okay, we are to be ones who believe. And a part of belief is obedience. Okay? You can say that a part of belief is obedience, but not all of belief is obedience. Because the scripture says, whoever puts his trust in him shall not be put to shame. Because there is no distinction between Yehudite and Greek, for the same master of all is rich to all those calling upon him. For everyone who calls on the name of Yehovah shall be saved. Okay, this is like a summation of the gospel account. Believing in the name of Yehovah. Believing that he is capable of doing the things which he has promised. How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? How then shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without one proclaiming? How shall they proclaim if they are not sent? As it has been written, how pleasant are the feet of those who bring the good news of peace, who bring the good news of the good, or good news of good matters in some translations. 1 Corinthians 15, 1-20 is necessary to understand this. Paul starts this chapter and he says, brothers, I make known to you the good news. Okay, you could have good news, glad tidings, gospel, whatever you want to translate that word as. I make known to you the gospel, which I brought as good news to you, which you also did receive, and in which you stand, through which you are being saved. If you hold fast that word I brought as good news to you, otherwise you have believed in vain. Okay, so you have to hold fast to it to the end. And in the next part, I'm going to show you something that Paul says about the salvation which is to come and its relation to us being saved now. It's interesting. For I delivered to you at the first that which I also received, that Messiah died for our sins according to the scriptures, that he was buried, and that he was raised the third day according to the scriptures, and that it was seen by Kepha, then by the 12. So what people do is they say, well, what's the gospel? Paul says this is the gospel. Believe that Messiah was raised the third day, that he died and was raised on the third day. That is all important to the gospel, but it's not the entire gospel. Okay, but it's important for us to believe that he died, that he was buried, and that he was raised to life. After that, he was seen by over 500 brothers at one time, of whom the greater part remain till now, but some have fallen asleep. After that, he was seen by Jacob and all the apostles. Last of all, he was seen by me also, as if to one born prematurely. For I am the least of the apostles, who am not worthy to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the assembly of Elohim. Some people who don't really like Paul, they say, oh, even Paul said he was least of the apostles. Read what it says. I'm least of the apostles because I persecuted the assembly. I'm not worthy to be an apostle. But he says, by the favor of Elohim, I am what I am, and his favor toward me was not in vain, but I labored much more than they all. Yet not I, but the favor of Elohim with me. So he's not saying that he's not a good apostle. He's saying, I'm not worthy to be an apostle, but now that I am an apostle, I worked harder than all the other apostles. Whether then it was I or they, so we proclaimed, and so you believed. And if Messiah is proclaimed that he has been raised from the dead, how do some among you say that there is no resurrection of the dead? And if there is no resurrection of the dead, the Messiah has not been raised. And if Messiah has not been raised, then our proclaiming is empty, and your belief also empty. And we are also found false witnesses of Elohim, because we have witnessed of Elohim that he raised up Messiah, whom he did not raise up, if then the dead are not raised. So he's saying, how can you say there's no resurrection of the dead? There's no resurrection of the dead. He didn't raise from Messiah from the dead. And if he didn't do that, we're false witnesses of Elohim. And if he didn't do that, we've all believed in vain. For if the dead are not raised, then neither Messiah has been raised. And if Messiah has not been raised, your belief is to no purpose, and you are still in your sins. Then also those who are fallen asleep in Messiah have perished. If in this life only we have expectation in Messiah, we are of all men the most wretched. But now Messiah has been raised from the dead and has become the first fruits of those having fallen asleep. So this is why it's necessary to believe that Yeshua died, was buried, and was raised on the third day. Because we have an expectation. We have an expectation that we will be raised to life also. It's proof, if you like, evidence that Elohim is able to do the things that he says that he can do. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood. Okay, nothing about the sun and the moon's physical nature there. Before the coming of the great and splendid day of Yahovah. And it shall be that everyone who calls on the name of Yahovah shall be saved. The idea of a blood moon would not even have been known to them. Men of Yisrael, hear these words, Yeshua of Nazareth, and the moon being turned into blood, I'm talking about. A man from Elohim, having been pointed out to you by mighty works and wonders and signs which Elohim did through him in your midst, as you yourselves also know. This is why Yeshua was doing these signs and these miracles. This one, given up by the set purpose and foreknowledge of Elohim, you were crucified and put to death through the hands of lawless men. Him Elohim raised up, having loosed the pangs of death, because it was impossible that he could be held in its grip. For David says concerning him, I saw Yahovah before me continually, because he is at my right hand, in order that I should not be shaken. For this reason my heart rejoiced, and my tongue was glad, and my flesh shall also rest in expectation. Because we believe this, because we believe these signs, because we know that Yahovah is capable of doing the things which is promised. To most people, we know that these things, that the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to them who believe, it is the power of Elohim. Because you shall not leave my soul in Sheol, nor shall you give your kind one to see corruption. That's death. You have made known to me the ways of life. You shall fill me with joy in your presence. And this is the gospel. For unto this Messiah died and rose and lived again, to rule over both the dead and the living. 1 Peter 1:17-21. And if you call on the Father, who without partiality judges according to each one's work, pass the time of your sojourning in fear. knowing that you were redeemed from your futile way of life, inherited from your fathers, not with what is corruptible, silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Messiah, a different sort of corruption talked of there, as of a lamb, unblemished and spotless, foreknown indeed before the foundation of the world, but manifested in these last times for your sakes, who through him believed in Elohim, who raised him from the dead and gave him esteem, does he say, so that your belief and your expectation are in Elohim. Romans 4:13 says, the promise that he should be the heir of the world was not to Abraham or to his seed through the Torah, but through a righteousness of belief. This is the full gospel. Verse 14 says, there has been no day like that before it or after it that Yehovah hearkened to the voice of a man, that he shamad the voice of a man, he hearkened, he obeyed. Clearly doesn't mean heard in hear. Shema can mean to just hear, but it clearly doesn't mean heard the voice of a man, because before this, at various points, we know that Yehovah has heard the voice of a man. So you could say, well, at no time after this, because this is what it said, did Yehovah ever hear the voice of a man or hearken to the voice of a man? If we look at Elijah, or we look at Elisha, or we look at Yeshua, what Yeshua tells us to do, if we speak in faith and we say to the mountain, be moved and thrown into the sea, then it will be done for us. Then clearly after this point, Yehovah heard the voice of a man. Well, that's how I see it anyway. I think the way that this is at this point when the book of Joshua was written, up until this point, nothing before or after the point it's talking about had Yehovah hearkened to the voice of a man. Of course, the teachings of Judaism, some of them hinge on the idea that Yehovah hearkens to men's voices now. That when the Torah says that it's not in heaven, what that means is that rabbis now have the authority to interpret the Torah and do to it as they will, as seems good to them, because heaven no longer has authority over the Torah, so men can interpret it. Very much like what the Catholic Church believe about how they can change the word. That's why we now have the Sabbath on a Sunday, for example. They say it is a mark of our authority over the word of God that the Sabbath can be changed to a Sunday. So it's all this same sort of thinking. In Judaism, it comes from the idea that Yehovah was kind of bargained by Abraham and by Moses, and that he was obeying their voice rather than something else happening in those situations. So verse 15 says, so Yahushua returned and all Yisrael with him to the camp at Gilgal. Now these 5 kings had fled and hidden themselves in a cave at Makkedah, and it was reported to Yahushua saying, the 5 kings have been found hidden in the cave at Makkedah. And Yahushua said, roll large stones against the mouth of the cave and set men by it to guard it. So what we see here are the events that we see happening when Yeshua is buried, that a stone is rolled over the cave and men are set to guard it. Again, the word of Elohim is like the thing that runs underneath everything. And you have the same events happening with different people, with different motivations, perhaps doing what is good over what is bad, or doing what is bad over what is good. And you do not stand still, but pursue your enemies, and you shall smite them in the rear. Do not allow them to enter their cities. Okay, so attacking the enemy from the rear. When Israel were attacked from the rear by their enemies, for example, this is seen as a bad thing, something without mercy. And this is why Yehovah actually says that the nation that attacked them in the rear to treat them in a certain way going forward. But here Yehovah is saying, Do not stand still, pursue your enemies. Or Yahushua is saying, do not stand still, pursue your enemies, smite them in the rear. Do not have any mercy towards them. Like we're told, do not let your eye pardon somebody who is in sin. When Yahuwah says to execute them, execute them. Don't have mercy towards them. See these things as Yahuwah sees them. If he says no, get rid of them, get rid of them. Do not allow them to enter your city, and do not allow them to enter their cities, rather, for Yahuwah your Elohim has given them into your hand. It came to be while Yahushua and the children of Yisrael had ended smiting them with a very great slaughter till they had finished. But those who escaped went into their walled cities. And all the people returned to the camp to Yahushua at Makkedah in peace. No one moved his tongue against any of the sons of Israel. Then Yahushua said, open the mouth of the cave, bring out those 5 kings to me from the cave. They did so, brought those 5 kings to him from the cave, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Yarmuth, the king of Lachish, the king of Eglon. And what we're going to see here is kind of a reversal of what we see with Yeshua. Yeshua is hung on a tree, and then he's taken into a cave, as these men will be, but these men are actually taken from the cave to be hung on the tree. It came to be when they brought out those kings to Yahushua, the Yahushua called for all the men of Israel, said to the chiefs of the men of battle who went with him, come near, put your feet on the necks of these kings. And they drew near and put their feet on their necks. Then Yahushua said to them, do not be afraid, nor be discouraged. Be strong and courageous, for this is what Yahuwah is going to do to all your enemies whom you are fighting. We've got something supernatural that shows us that Yahuwah will be with us to defeat the enemies. All of these victories that Yahuwah has given them, he says, look, it's going to be like this. Yahuwah is going to be with you. Just like Yeshua, where death, who we are told is the last enemy to be defeated or brought to naught, Yeshua defeated death. And that is the sign to us that that enemy will be defeated in our lives. And afterward, Yahushua smote them and killed them, and he hanged them on 5 trees, as Yeshua was said to be. And they were hanging on the trees until evening, again, as Yeshua was, as the Sabbath was approaching. It came to be at the time of the going down of the sun, the Yahushua commanded, and they took them down from the trees, and they threw them into a cave where they had been hidden, the cave where they'd been hidden, and laid large stones against the cave's mouth to this day. Again, these things, when was the book of Joshua written? That is true at that point in time. To this day, cave with large stones laid against it. And on that day, Yahushua captured Makkedah, and he smote it with the edge of the sword, and he put its king under the ban. Them and all the people who were in it, he left no survivor, and he did to the king of Makkedah as he had done to the king of Jericho. So here we've got the enemy being put in the cave, being buried in the same way that Yeshua was. In our lives, the enemy, or a enemy in our lives, is sin. We're told in Romans 6, do you not know that as many of us as were immersed into Messiah Yeshua were baptized into his death? We were therefore buried with him through immersion into death, that as Messiah was raised from the dead by the esteem of the Father, so also we should walk in the newness of life. So our old self, the body of sin, was crucified, and it was buried with Messiah in the same way that these enemies were buried like Messiah was buried, in the same way that Messiah was buried. We, however, were raised to the newness of life. These enemies, okay, representing the body of sin, were dead, and of course did not resurrect. For if we have come to be grown together in the likeness of his death, we shall be also of the resurrection. Knowing this, that our old man was crucified with him, so that the body of sin might be rendered powerless to serve sin no longer. And we're going to read now about the vanquishing of the enemies in the land of Canaan. And as we can see that these enemies are a picture of the body of sin being crucified, being put to death. The death of the enemies in the land of Canaan we can see as being like the conquering of sin in one's life, the way that it's supposed to be. Of course, when you come to Yehovah, you're not perfect. And when you come to Yehovah, you don't suddenly begin to do everything all at once. It happens step by step. As you come across the enemies, you overcome the enemies. But what one must not do is to allow the enemies to live, to dwell in your midst. Because if they do, it's the same as allowing a physical enemy to dwell in the midst of Israel. It will become a snare to you. Then Yahushua passed over, and all Yisrael with him, from Makkedah to Livnah, and they fought against Livnah. Yehovah also gave it and its king into the hand of Yisrael, and he smote it, and all the people who were in it with the edge of the sword. He left no survivor in it, and he did to its king as he had done to the king of Jericho. Then Yahushua passed over, and all Yisrael with him, from Livnah to Lachish, and encamped against it and fought against it. And Yehovah gave Lachish into the hand of Yisrael, who captured it on the second day, smote it, and all the people who were in it, the edge of the sword, according to all that he had done to Livnah. And it's the same with us. We do with sin. When the thought arises in our head, we take it into captivity to obedience to Messiah, and we put that sin to death. The body of sin is crucified. Then Horam, king of Gezer, came up to help Lachish, and Yahushua smote him and his people until he left him no survivor. Then Yahushua passed over, and all Yisrael with him, from Lachish to Eglon, and they encamped against it and fought against it. They captured it on that day and smote it with the edge of the sword, and all the souls who were in it he put under the ban that day, according to all that he had done to Lachish. Then Yahushua went up, and all Yisrael with him, from Eglon to Hebron. They fought against it, captured it, smote it with the edge of the sword, its king, all the cities, the people who were in it. He left no survivor, according to all he had done to Eglon, but put it and the people who were in it under the ban. Then Yahushua returned, and all Yisrael with him, to Devir, fought against it, captured it and its king, all its cities. They smote them with the edge of the sword and put all the people who were in it under the ban, left no survivor, as he had done to Hebron. So he did to Devir and its king, as he had done to Livnah and its king. Thus Yahushua smote all the land, the mountain country in the south and the low country, the wilderness slopes, all their kings. He left no survivor, put all that breathed under the ban, as Yehovah Elohim had commanded. Of course, those things that are under the ban are spoken of as being those things which are devoted to destruction. They're abominations and they're accursed. And Yahushua smote them from Kadesh Barnea as far as Azar, and all the land of Goshen, even as far as Givon. And Yahushua captured all these kings in their land at one time, because Yehovah Elohim of Yisrael fought for Yisrael. Yahushua returned, and all Yisrael with him, to camp at Gilgal. There it came to be, when Yavin, king of Chatzor, heard, that he sent to Yovav, king of Madon, and to the king of Shimron, and to the king of Achshaph, and to the kings who were from the north in the mountains and in the desert plain south of Kinneroth, in the low country and in the heights of Doa on the west, the Canaanites in the east and the west, the Amorite, the Hittite, the Perizzite, the Jebusite in the mountains, and the Hivite below Hermon in the land of Mitzpah. Of course, the men of Givon were Hivites as well. They went out, they and all their armies with them, as many people, as numerous as the sand on the seashore, with very many horses and chariots. And all these kings met together, and they came and camped together at the waters of Merom to fight against Israel. And again, the kings of the earth all coming out with their armies, many horses and chariots. It's a picture of what we see in the end times, when we've got these spiritual entities coming out to fight against Yeshua and the host of heaven. And Yahuwah said to Yahushua, do not be afraid of their presence, for tomorrow about this time I'm giving all of them over to Yisrael, slain. Hamstring their horses, burn their chariots with fire. Yahuwah has got a different view of giving animals in sacrifice, of eating meat. Okay, here he says to hamstring their horses. That's quite a brutal act if you know what hamstringing is. Yahushua and all the soldiers with him came against them suddenly by the waters of Merom, and they fell on them. And Yahuwah gave them into the hand of Yisrael, and they smote them and pursued them to great Sidon and to Misrephoth, Mayim, and to the valley of Mitzpah eastward. And they smote them until no survivor was left to them. So Yahushua did to them as Yahuwah said to him. He hamstrung their horses, burned their chariots with fire. This is how Yahuwah wants you to deal with sin in your life. When something comes up and you're challenged by it in the word, Yahuwah expects us to destroy that thing, to be merciless towards it, to not let your eye pardon that thing, because Yahuwah has not pardoned that thing. We are not to pardon that thing either. Deuteronomy 7 verse 26 says, do not bring an abomination into your house, lest you be accursed like it. Utterly loathe it and utterly hate it, for it is accursed. It is devoted to destruction. Galatians 1 verse 9 says, as we have said before, and now I say again, if anyone brings a gospel to you beside what you have received, let him be accursed. And as Charlie taught last week, this is the same word, the Greek in Galatians 1 verse 9, as is used in the Septuagint to talk of something that is devoted to destruction. It is accursed. So if somebody comes and they're teaching another gospel, like the people who come in and they pervert the grace of God, they teach another gospel that it's okay to do those things, and you've been forgiven, and you might continue on with sin in your life, but Jesus has forgiven you, so don't worry about it. All of those sorts of things. You do not receive that. If anyone brings good news to you, beside what you've received, let him be accursed. And what you do with those things that are accursed, you don't invite them into your home. You don't allow them to be in your midst. 2 John 1, 9-11 says, everyone who is transgressing and not staying in the doctrine of Messiah does not possess Elohim. The one who stays in the doctrine of Messiah possesses both Father and the Son. Okay, someone who abides in the doctrine. Not somebody who gives lip service to it, somebody who abides in it. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this doctrine, do not receive him into your house, nor greet him. Again, he's just like the one who is devoted to destruction. You don't bring him into your home. You are to utterly loathe it. You're to utterly hate it. Not the people of the world. The people of the world were told to leave in Yahuwah's hands. Yahuwah will judge them. It is the brother who is in fornication, for example. Do not even eat with such a one. Do not have them in your house, nor even greet them. For he who greets him shares in his wicked works. Okay, what we're to do with these people is to reprove them. The word tells us that if you turn somebody back from their sin, you have saved a brother from death. But you're not just to be all smiles around them and, hi, come in, have something to eat. Okay, because in doing that, you share in their wicked works. You accommodate their wicked works. Yahushua turned back at this time and captured Chatzor, smote its king with the sword, for Chatzor was formerly the head of all those kingdoms. And they smote all the people who were in it with the edge of the sword, putting them under the ban. They were accursed, they were devoted to destruction. He did not leave anyone breathing. Then he burned Chatzor with fire. And Yahushua captured all the cities of those kings and all their kings, and he smote them with the edge of the sword, and he put them under the ban, as Moshe, the servant of Yehovah, commanded. Now, 2 Corinthians 10, 4-6 is interesting for us as we're considering these things. We're considering these things to be sin in our lives. They're going in with physical weapons to fight them and to kill them physically. 2 Corinthians 10, 4-6 says, "For the weapons we fight with are not fleshly, but mighty in Elohim, for overthrowing strongholds, overthrowing reasonings, and every high matter that exalts itself against the knowledge of Elohim." When you have those reasonings, which are like, oh, I'm not sure, maybe if I look at the word like this, it can be different, or maybe I don't have to do this, or whatever it is, anything that exalts itself against Elohim, what you do is you take captive every thought to make it obedient to the Messiah. Like they were taking captive these things, and then they were putting them to death with physical weapons. That's what we are to do with our spiritual weapons, with the word of Elohim. And being ready to punish all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled. However, Israel did not burn any cities that stood on their mounds, but Yahushua burned only Chatzor. And all the spoil of these cities and the livestock the children of Israel took as booty for themselves, but they smote every man with the edge of the sword until they had destroyed them, and they did not leave anyone breathing. As Yehovah had commanded Moshe his servant, so Moshe commanded Yahushua, and so Yahushua did. Like Paul says, follow me as I follow Messiah. He did not turn aside the word of all that Yehovah had commanded Moshe. Thus Yahushua took all this land, the mountain country and all the south and all the land of Goshen and the low country and the desert plain, the mountains of Yisrael and its lowlands. From Mount Chalak that goes up to Seir and as far as Baal Gad in the valley of Lebanon, below Mount Hermon. And he captured all their kings and smote them and killed them. We take it captive to obedience to the Messiah, we smite it, we kill it. We do not allow it to dwell in our midst. Yahushua fought with all those kings for a long time. There was not a city that made peace with the children of Israel except the Hivites, the inhabitants of Givon. Again, those people that they had sworn to because they had lied to them. All the others they took in battle. And it was of Yehovah to harden their hearts so that they should come against Israel in battle in order to put them under the ban, so that they might have no favor, but that he might annihilate them as Yehovah commanded Moshe. This is how Yehovah works. With some people, their hearts will be hard. Their eyes, they will close. Because of this, I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. And in them the prophecy of Yeshayahu is fulfilled, which says, hearing you shall hear, and by no means understand, and seeing you shall see, and by no means perceive. For the heart of this people has become thickened, their ears are hard of hearing, their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their heart and turn back, and I heal them. And blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. We are given to understand the secrets of the kingdom of Elohim. If anyone hears my words, Yeshua says, but does not watch over them, I do not judge him. For I did not come to judge the world, but to save the world, to deliver the world from the enemy. This is why Yeshua came. Okay, it doesn't please Elohim for anybody to die. He's not pleased with the death of the wicked. He doesn't want that. He sent Yeshua to save the world. That's what he desires. He who rejects me and does not receive my words has one who judges him. The word that I have spoken shall judge him in the last day. Yeshua didn't come speaking the word of Elohim to condemn everyone to death. He came speaking the word of Elohim so that people would be saved and brought to life But if people don't receive it, the word that they rejected will judge them in the last day. At that time, Yahushua came and cut off the Anakim from the mountains, from Hebron, from Devir, from Anav, from all the mountains of Yehudah and all the mountains of Israel. Yahushua put them with their cities under the ban. There were none of the Anakim left in the land. Of the children of Israel, only in Azar, in Gath, and in Ashdod some remained. Thus Yahushua took the entire land according to all that Yahovah had said to Moshe. We do the same with sin. We have complete victory. We overcome the enemy according to all that Yahovah has said to Moshe. Yahushua gave it as an inheritance to Israel according to their divisions by their tribes, and the land rested from fighting. And Charlie will be going through this when we come back from Sukkot. He'll be going through the land being divided by lot. The land rested from fighting. They were given rest from their enemies all about, as we will be when Yeshua leads us into the land, and as we should be with sin in our lives. We put all of that, we take it captive, we smite it with the edge of the sword, the spiritual sword, and we are given rest from our enemies all around. These are the kings of the land whom the children of Israel smote, and whose land they possessed beyond the Jordan towards the sun rising from the Wadi Ammon to Mount Hermon, all the desert plain eastward. Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon, ruling from Aroer, which is on the bank of the Wadi Arnon, from the middle of that wadi and half Gilad, even as far as the Wadi Yabok, the form and the border of the children of Ammon, the desert plain from the sea of Kinneroth eastward as far as the sea of Arava, the salt sea, the way to Beth Yeshimoth, and the southward below the slopes of Pisgah, and the border of Og, king of Bashan, who was left of the remnant of the Rephaites, who dwelt at Ashtaroth and Edrei, and ruled in Mount Chemon and in Salca and in all Bashan, as far as the border of the Geshurites and the Ma'achites, and as far as Gilad, as far as the border of Sichon, king of Heshbon. Moshe, the servant of Yahovah, and the children of Israel had smitten them, and Moshe, the servant of Yahovah, had given it as a possession to the Rehavanites, to the Gadites, the half-tribe of Manasseh. So they're the people that they conquered on the other side of the Jordan, and Moshe gives that land to them when they ask as an inheritance. Revelation 19:11-15 says, I saw the heaven opened, and there was a white horse, and he who sat on him was called trustworthy and true, and in righteousness he judges and fights. And his eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, having a name that had been written, which no one had perceived except himself, having been dressed in a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of Yahovah. He's the Word made flesh. The armies in the heaven, dressed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. Out of his mouth goes a sharp sword. Okay? These weapons are not fleshly, but mighty in Elohim. It is the word of Elohim, the sword of the Spirit, that with it he should smite the nations, and he will when he comes back. He vanquishes the enemies when he comes back with the spiritual weapons. Also, the beast and the kings of the earth, the spiritual entities, he and the host of heaven will come and vanquish them also. And he shall shepherd them with a rod of iron, and he treads the winepress and the fierceness and wrath of El Shaddai. These are the kings of the land which Yahushua and the children of Israel smote beyond the Jordan, on the west from Baal Gad in the valley of Lebanon, as far as Mount Chalak that goes up Seir, which is the land of Edom, of course, which Yahushua gave to the tribes of Israel as a possession according to their divisions. In the mountain country, in the low country, in the desert plain, in the slopes, in the wilderness, in the south, the Hittites, the Amorites, Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now we have a list of kings, and as you see these names come up, I want you to think not only of their victory and Yehovah showing that he was with them, but our victory with sin, the enemies in our life, also Yeshua's victory when he comes back and he smites all of the nations. It's one after another. As these kings come up, they're defeated. Okay, if Yehovah is with us, who can be against us? And certainly no one's going to be against Yeshua, be they a spiritual king or a physical king. And they killed in all 31 kings. 2 Timothy 4:17-18 says, "But the Master stood with me and did strengthen me, so that through me the preaching might be completely accomplished, so that all the Gentiles should hear, and I was rescued out of the lion's mouth." Okay? This idea of being rescued. In the Greek, we have being rescued, we have being delivered, we have being saved. Sometimes those words are translated interchangeably. But in the Hebrew, we've got one word which means salvation. Okay, it means deliverance. So just like Charlie was looking at last week with tongues, tongues is divided from the Hebrew to Nava. It's divided into speaking in tongues and prophesying. Okay, but all of that in the Hebrew is one concept. Again, the heart in the Hebrew is one word, it's one concept, it's the lev. The Greek explains the heart to contain the mind also. Okay, the Hebrew speaks of the thoughts of the heart, but in Greek there's another word. And we see the same sort of thing with the concepts involved with salvation. Being rescued is something that will be covered by that Hebrew word. "And the Master shall rescue me from every wicked work and save me for his heavenly kingdom. To him be esteemed forever and ever. Amen." Okay, so the Master shall rescue me. He shall give me deliverance from every wicked work. Sin is an enemy that we are delivered from, that we're saved from, or that we are rescued from. Giving thanks to the Father who has made us fit to share in the inheritance of the set-apart ones in the light, who has delivered us, saved us, rescued us from the power of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of the Son of his love. That word that's translated delivered there is the word that we just saw translated as rescued, because this is what deliverance, salvation is. In whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins. Okay, so these enemies in our lives, he has given us salvation from. He has delivered us from these enemies. Matthew 6:13 is interesting. It says, "Do not lead us into trial, but deliver us from the wicked one." Save us from the wicked one, because he is our enemy also. So sin's an enemy. The wicked one, Hasatan, the tempter, the one who will come and try you, he is an enemy as well. So this prayer is asking for deliverance to be saved from the wicked one. Psalm 27 verse 1 says, "Yehovah is my light and my deliverance, my salvation, my rescue. Whom should I fear?" Yehovah is the refuge of my life, because this is what deliverance is, and he's deliverance to us in many different ways. Exodus 14:13-14. Moshe said to the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand still and see the deliverance of Yehovah, which he does for you today. For the Mitzrites whom you see today, you are never, never to see again. Yehovah does fight for you, and you keep still." So here we have deliverance from a physical enemy. Matthew 1:21. "And she shall give birth to a son, and you shall call his name Yeshua." Yeshua meaning he shall save. Call his name. Call his name. He shall save, for he shall save his people from their sins. I saw the beast and the kings of the earth, the armies gathered together to fight him who sat on the horse and his army. So deliverance from physical enemies, from sin, deliverance from Hasatan, deliverance from spiritual enemies. 1 Corinthians 1:9-10. Indeed, we had the sentence of death in ourselves, that we should not trust in ourselves, but in Elohim who raises the dead. And there he's talking about the fact that they were literally sentenced to death. Who rescued us, delivered us, saved us from so great a death, and does rescue us from death, in whom we trust that he shall still rescue us. Each of us have in us the sentence of death, that we should trust in Elohim who raised Yeshua from the dead. He gave us that supernatural sign that he is able and willing to raise from the dead. 1 Corinthians 15:23-26. Each in his own order. Messiah the firstfruits, then those who are of Messiah at his coming. Then the end, when he delivers up the kingdom to Elohim the Father, when he has brought to naught all rule and all authority and power. For he has to reign until he puts all enemies under his feet, until salvation, deliverance, rescue is brought from all enemies. The last enemy to be brought to naught is death. So the good news is the summary. One is faced with an enemy whom one cannot overcome, be it Hasatan, be it death, be it sin in your life that you cannot overcome. Okay, be it physical enemy who is far too powerful for you. So flesh and blood enemies, sin, Hasatan, death. Salvation or deliverance or rescue or whatever word you want to use comes from belief in the name of Yehovah, his character, who he is. Belief in the Son, obedience to the Son. Again, obedience is a part of belief. Belief in the promises of Elohim. And again, these supernatural works which he's given us show us that he's capable of delivering on these promises. Belief in the Word. It's the same as the belief in the Son, because he was the Word. His death has brought us that salvation or deliverance. That's a necessary component of the good news. He paid the ransom price for our souls, which were under the power of death, and his sacrifice made atonement for our consciences, both the subjects of other teachings. His resurrection is a promise of our resurrection. It shows us that we will be resurrected, and that Elohim is faithful to deliver on what he promises. So this is the good news. Luke 13:22-24 is worth bearing in mind as we're considering this. As he was going through the cities and villages teaching and journeying toward Jerusalem, someone said to him, Master, are there few who are being saved, who are being delivered, who are being rescued, who have this salvation that's offered to them? And he said to them, strive to enter in through the narrow gate, because many, I say to you, shall seek to enter in and shall not be able. Okay? Few find the narrow gate. Of them, many will seek to enter in and will not be able to enter in. There are few who are being rescued, and we're to strive to do it. That price has been paid, that ransom price has been paid. Yehovah has done everything that he can do. Okay? He has forgiven us of our past sins. Now it's up to us to run the race with endurance. Ephesians 2:1-5 says, and you were dead in trespasses and sins. It's an enemy that you could not overcome. That sin that you had done, you were dead in that. You could not overcome that of yourself. In which you once walked according to the course of this world, according to the ruler of the authority of the air, of the spirit that is now working in the sons of disobedience, among whom also we all once lived in the lusts of our flesh, doing the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, as also the rest, vessels prepared for destruction, or vessels that would have ended in destruction. But Elohim, who is rich in compassion, because of his great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in trespasses, made us alive together with Messiah. By favor or by grace, you have been saved. So we read this throughout the scriptures, don't we? We read, you have been saved. And we have been delivered or saved from sin that we could not overcome. We could never unsin. We could never take away that sentence of death which was upon ourselves. Romans 13 verse 11, though, it tells us that our salvation is nearer than when we did believe. So when we did believe, we were forgiven of our sins. Now, Paul actually tells us something very interesting about this idea of you have been saved and you will be saved again in the future. And it's something I've never seen all the times that I've read the scriptures up until now. And we'll get to that. 1 Peter 1, 3-9 says, Blessed be the Elohim and Father of our Master Yeshua Messiah, who according to his great compassion has caused us to be reborn to a living expectation through the resurrection of Yeshua Messiah from the dead. Okay, to an expectation. To an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled and unfading, having been kept in the heavens for you, who are protected by the power of Elohim through belief for a salvation ready to be revealed in the last time. And now that we know what salvation is, we can appreciate what this is saying more. There is a salvation or a deliverance. You're going to be rescued from an enemy. You're going to be delivered in the end time. And we are protected by the power of Elohim through our faith for that. In which you exult, even though for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by manifold trials, manifold tests of your faith, in order that the proving of your faith, much more precious than gold that perishes and proven by fire, might be found to result in praise and respect and esteem at the revelation of Yeshua Messiah. So at the revelation of Yeshua Messiah, there is a salvation that we are expecting. Whom having not seen, you love, in whom you exult with unspeakable and esteemed joy, yet not seeing, but believing. And this is important to the entire gospel. Not having seen what is promised, but believing that Elohim is faithful. Obtaining the goal of your belief, and that is your souls being saved, being delivered, being rescued. So what does Paul tell us about this? For the intense longing of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of Elohim. For the creation was subjected to futility, not from choice, but because of him who subjected it in anticipation. The creation itself also shall be delivered from the bondage to corruption. This word means to be set free from. Into the esteemed freedom of the children of Elohim. For we all know that the creation groans together and suffers the pain of childbirth together until now. And not only so, but even we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit, we ourselves also groan within ourselves, eagerly waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body. In this expectation, we were saved. So when the scripture tells us you were saved, how were we saved? In this expectation, the expectation of a salvation yet future. That's how we were saved. But expectation that is seen is not expected. If you've seen it and the salvation has already come to you and you've been delivered from death or whatever it is, then that's not an expectation. For when anyone sees, does he expect it? So Paul says you have been saved, but you've not seen that salvation yet. You are saved in the expectation of that salvation. You've got to run the race with endurance to reach that. And if we expect what we do not see, we eagerly wait for it with endurance. So we can say we were saved, but we were saved in expectation of a salvation yet future. Before we go into this, I want to draw people's attention, particularly really those people who are online, although it might be useful for you to know about it. On the website, there is now a new tab that says live stream. So if people want to find the link to the live stream and it's not up on YouTube and you don't use Facebook maybe, you can go to the website, thewaybiblicalfellowship.com. Don't put www, just put thewaybiblicalfellowship.com. That'll take you to that homepage, and then you click that tab there. That's a live stream, and that'll take you to the live stream. That'll always be up, you're willing. Okay, so this is a good point to mention that next week it's Sukkot. So there will be no Torah portion next week. Charlie is going to do the last part of the book of Joshua when we get back. Because when we get back, we'll have a day before it's the Shabbat. So I'm not going to have Torah portion Bereshit prepared by then. So Charlie doing it then gives me an extra week to do Bereshit. He was going to record it on Monday and then we put it out during Sukkot. But we're going to do that now. During Sukkot, though, because last year when we did Sukkot, there was obviously on the channel, there's a huge drop-off in view time. Because of the way YouTube works, if there's no view time, the YouTube algorithm will stop recommending videos to people. And after Sukkot, view time dropped. And then after that, it never went back up to the level that it was. In fact, it just persisted at that point for about half of the level that it was. So during that time, in order to avoid that, we're going to put up Sukkot specials. Okay, each day we're going to put up 2 videos, one from Charlie, one from me, and you'll know them because they're going to have this border around it. So thanks to Ashley for making that border to put around the thumbnails. So these are some of the videos that you can expect coming up during Sukkot. So, in this last part, I want to look at the book of Joshua and what it has taught us about the gospel. What we've seen about the gospel in it. Joshua is a picture of Yeshua also. So, the beginning of the book of Joshua, it says, it came to be after the death of Moshe, the servant of Yehovah. So, Achrei Mot, Moshe, or Acharei Mot as people say it, Moshe, the servant of Yehovah, that Yehovah spoke to Yehoshua, son of Nun, the assistant of Moshe, saying, Moshe, my servant, is dead, so now arise, pass over this Jordan, you and all this people, to a land which I'm giving to them, to the children of Israel. Okay, so we've got Moses' death, and then we've got Joshua after Moses. In Luke 16 to 17, it says, the Torah and the prophets until Yochanan. Okay, some people put a where in there, where until Yochanan, but that's literally what it says. The Torah and the prophets until Yochanan. From that time, the kingdom of Elohim is being announced. And that word is euangelizo. Okay, that means basically to proclaim the good news. So from John the Baptist, the kingdom of Elohim was being evangelized, if you like. And everyone is doing violence towards it. So what does this mean? Okay, the Torah and the prophets were our instruction. They're what we had before Yochanan. Okay? Yochanan was actually Eliyahu. And it says, in the Gospel of Mark, it says that from Yochanan, that was the beginning of things being restored. And it is easier for the heaven and the earth to pass away than for one tittle of the Torah to lose its authority. So when we're looking at this picture, What somebody in the Christian church might say, for example, is they might say, well, now Moses is dead and Jesus has taken over. That's not the case. Yeshua tells us very plainly, it's easier for the heaven and the earth to pass away than for one tittle of the Torah, one tiny mark in the Torah, to lose its authority. Luke 16:31, Abraham speaking to the rich man in Sheol, he said to him, if they do not hear Moshe and the prophets, neither would they be persuaded, even if one should rise from the dead, as Yeshua did. So the Torah and the prophets were enough for people to hear and to believe, to hear and to obey. Of course, we know that most people didn't. Okay, so neither would they be persuaded, even if one should rise from the dead. In the context there, what they're speaking of is the rich man says, send Lazarus back to them from the dead, and then my brothers will believe. And he says, no, if they don't believe Moshe and the prophets, they will not believe, even though one should be risen from the dead. Matthew 5 verse 18 says, for truly I say to you, till the heaven and the earth pass away, one jot or one tittle shall by no means pass from the Torah till all be fulfilled. And we know when the heaven and the earth pass away, when they're destroyed by fire, is at the time of the end. So the Torah will not pass away, not even the smallest stroke, a yod or a tittle, which was kind of a little mark. Galatians 3:23-25 shows us what Moses dying and Joshua taking over is a picture of. Not that we can apply all of it verbatim to that. Okay, Moshe dying and then Joshua taking over is not described exactly by this. The events of Moshe is not described by this, but this is described by those events. Those events are a picture of this. You'll see what I mean. But before belief came, we were being guarded under Torah. Okay, so Moses and Torah are synonymous. They're used interchangeably. Joshua came, and the example that he gives us is the example of faith. We see in him what Yeshua does. When he says, if you be willing, take this cup from me, nevertheless not my will be done, but thine. And we see Yahushua doing this all the way through the book of Joshua. He gives us an example of what faith is. Not that Moses was without faith, it's that Joshua comes and shows us belief as Yeshua did. So before belief came, we were being guarded under Torah, or being guarded under Moshe, having been shut up for the belief being about to be revealed. Therefore the Torah became our trainer unto Messiah, in order to be declared right by belief. Because what Torah does is it shows us that we've all sinned and we've all fallen short of the glory of Elohim. It is our trainer unto the Messiah. It shows us our need for a Savior. It shows us that we have an enemy that we cannot overcome. It doesn't matter what we do. No flesh is saved by works of the Torah. So it doesn't matter if you realize and you're like, oh, I'm going to do all of the Torah to save myself. There's an enemy that we cannot overcome at that point. And the Torah shows us that in order to be declared right by belief. And after belief has come, we are no longer under a trainer. Does that mean we no longer follow the Torah? No, that's not what it says. We're no longer under a trainer that leads us to Messiah. We don't need the Torah to show us our need for Messiah. We don't need the Torah to show us that we can be saved by belief. Again, belief, part of belief is obedience. It's a necessary part of belief. So when belief has come, we will follow the Torah by belief. But we no longer need the trainer to lead us to Messiah to belief. And that is what is pictured by the death of Moshe and Yahushua taking over as leader. Joshua 1 verse 18 says, Whoever rebels against your command and does not obey your words in all you command him is put to death. Okay, so with Yeshua being pictured by Joshua, we can see this in Yeshua as well. He who believes in the Son shall have everlasting life, but he who does not obey the Son shall not see life. So he who does not do all of your commands shall be put to death. The wrath of Elohim remains on him. Joshua 2:12-13. Now please swear to me by Yahovah, since I have shown you kindness, that you also show kindness to my father's house, and shall give me a true token, and shall spare my father, my mother, my brothers, my sisters, and all that they have, and shall deliver our souls from death. Okay? Rahab trusted in the name of Yahovah that their souls would be delivered from death. So Rahab is an example of the Gentiles who come and they believe. Joshua 2:21, and she said, let it be according to your words. She sent them away, and they went, and she bound the scarlet cord in the window. As we saw, the scarlet cord, the window is like the blood on the lintel, so that death would pass over the house. The Passover being pictured here, Yeshua being our Passover lamb. Joshua 3:13, it shall be as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests who bear the ark of Yahovah, the master of all the earth, come to rest in the waters of the Jordan, that the waters of the Jordan are cut off, the waters that come down from upstream and stand as a heap. One example among many of Yahovah through a supernatural act showing us his mastery over the earth, his mastery over creation, his power to deliver us from the enemy. Exodus 15:7-8, and in the greatness of your excellence you pulled down those who rose up against you. You sent forth your wrath, it consumed them like stubble. And with the wind of your nostrils the waters were heaped up. The waters stood like a wall. Okay, very much like the waters stood still upstream in Joshua. The depths became dense in the heart of the sea. Okay, and as we've seen before, this is prophetic of us entering into Mount Zion. The language that's used here, it's a mix of the things that happened when they came out of Israel and the things that are yet to come. Peoples heard, they trembled, anguish gripped the inhabitants of Philistia. Then the chiefs of Edom were troubled, the mighty men of Moab, trembling grips them. All the inhabitants of Canaan melted. Fear and dread fell on them by the greatness of your arm. They are silent as a stone until your people pass over, O Yahovah, until the people whom you have brought pass over. Okay? So the people you've bought. So the people that he's redeemed. This is prophetic of when we will pass over the sea and Sheol. When we will come out of Sheol, when the gates of Sheol will not prevail against us, and we will come out and we will meet with Messiah in the clouds if we are dead at his coming. This is prophetic. We know that the chiefs of Edom and all the inhabitants of Canaan weren't all silent until they passed over. But when you think of it in terms of us in Sheol, there's another side to Sheol. You've got all of the other people on the other side watching as these things come to pass. Isaiah 52 verse 15 says, he does likewise sprinkle many nations. Concerning him, kings shut their mouths. For that which had not been recounted to them, they have seen. And what they had not heard, they have understood. Just as we see prophesied in Exodus 15. Okay, they had nothing to say and they waited in silence until his people pass over. That's what's prophesied for us. Okay, the things which had not been recounted to them, they've seen for themselves and comprehended. You bring them in and plant them in the mountain of your inheritance, in the place, O Yahovah, which you have made for your own dwelling, the set apart place, O Yahovah, which your hands have prepared. Yahovah reigns forever and ever. For the horses of Pharaoh went with his chariots and his horsemen into the sea, and Yahovah brought back the waters of the sea upon them. The children of Israel went on dry ground in the midst of the sea, just as when Yahovah makes a way for the remnant to pass over, for those who have been redeemed to pass over. This prophecy I see being fulfilled as they're silent as they see his people pass over, and then maybe they try to go through also like Pharaoh and his chariots, and then they are destroyed and the enemy is destroyed. Joshua 4 verse 18 says, "It came to be when the priests who bore the ark of the covenant of Yahovah had come from the midst of the Jordan, and the soles of the priests' feet touched the dry land, that the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and flowed over its banks as before." Okay? Just like the pictures that we saw of what's yet to come, also in Exodus when the waters returned. Joshua 3 verse 10, Yahushua said, "By this you shall know that the living El is in your midst, and that he is certainly driving out from before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, and the Jebusites." Okay, so again, supernatural work. By this, you will know that Yahovah will do this. Just like by the supernatural work of Yeshua being risen from the dead, we know that we will be raised to everlasting life, that there is a resurrection of the dead. In Revelation 19:14-15, the armies in the heaven dressed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. And out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall shepherd them with a rod of iron, and he treads the winepress and fierceness and wrath of El Shaddai. Okay, so here he destroys many nations. He destroys the enemy, so to speak. However, Yahushua kept Rachav the whore and her father's household and all that she had, and she dwelt in the midst of Israel to this day, because she hid the messengers whom Yahushua sent to sent to Jericho to spy out. So in this we can see the gospel, that salvation will be brought to the Gentiles. However, this is a picture of something else. We remember that this is when Yahushua goes into the land, which is Yeshua's return. When he leads us into the land, we should expect to see something like this. Okay, why was it? It was because she hid the messengers whom Yahushua had sent. Okay, Yahushua being a picture of Yeshua. In Matthew 25, when the Son of Adam comes in his esteem, the second coming, all the set apart messengers with him, then he shall sit on the throne of his esteem, and all the nations shall be gathered before him. And he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. So when he comes, all of the nations are going to be gathered before him. Not the brethren, not his people, okay? The nations are going to be gathered before him, just like Rachav is representative of the nations. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then the king shall say to those on his right hand, "Come you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world." That's quite an amazing statement when we're considering that these are the nations. But just like Rahab being invited to dwell in the midst of Israel, not joining Israel, as it turns out, but dwelling in the midst of Israel, here we see the nations also coming into the midst of the kingdom. But it's a very specific thing that these people have done. Remember, Rahab had treated the messengers who were a part of Israel in a certain way. She had given them succor, so to speak. "For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. Was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then the righteous shall answer him, saying, Master, when did we see you hungry and we fed you, or thirsty and gave you to drink? When did we see you a stranger and took you in, or naked and clothed you? When did we see you sick or in prison and we came to you? Remember, this is just after the events of Matthew 24, where we're told the world's going to turn upside down. Everyone's going to turn against the believers. The king shall answer and say to them, Truly I say to you, insofar as you did to one of the least of these my brothers, you did it to me. Okay, so we've got Rahab, how she treats the messengers from Israel. Then she is invited to dwell in the midst of Israel. Here, the nations who in this time of hardship do this to the brethren, those people are invited to come and dwell in the midst of Israel. Funnily enough, it's prophesied in the Old Testament too. Joshua 8:30-34 says, And Yahushua built an altar to Yehovah Elohim of Yisrael in Mount Eval. As Moshe, the servant of Yehovah, commanded the children of Israel, as it is written in the book of the Torah of Moshe, an altar of unhewn stones over which no man has wielded iron, and they offered on it burnt offerings to Yehovah and sacrificed peace offerings. And there in the presence of the children of Israel, he wrote on the stones a copy of the Torah of Moshe, which he had written. So we've got here Yahushua building an altar where sacrifices are offered. Similarly, Yeshua does the same thing. Zechariah 6:11-13 says, And you shall take the silver and gold, make a crown, and set it on the head of Yahushua, the son of Vayotqabtsu, the high priest. Different Yahushua, obviously. And shall speak to him, saying, Thus said Yehovah Zevaoth, saying, See the man whose name is the branch. This is Yeshua. From his place he shall branch out, and he shall build the temple of Yehovah. It is he who is going to build the temple of Yehovah. It is he who is going to bear the splendor, and he shall sit and rule on his throne, and shall be a priest on his throne, and the council of peace shall be between them both. So just as Yahushua, Joshua, servant of Moshe, is building an altar for sacrifices to be offered upon, the branch, Yeshua, builds a temple. We find out from the book of Ephesians that there's a temple being built in the spirit for spiritual sacrifices to be offered him. Joshua 9:1 came to be all the kings, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Canaanite, Perizzite, Hivite, the Jebusite, they gathered together to fight with Yahushua and Yisrael with one accord. As we saw at the beginning, this is a picture of the kings of the earth gathering together to fight Yeshua and the army of heaven. Joshua 10:6, the men of Givon sent to Yahushua at the camp of Gilgal, saying, Do not withdraw your hand from your servants. Come up to us quickly. Save us. Help us, for all the kings of the Amorites who dwell in the mountains have assembled against us. We saw they've come up, they've lied to Yahushua. They come up with their old wineskins. They're unrepentant people. They lie to him to make a covenant with them. And when the enemy comes, they cry out, Help us and save us from the people. In Joshua 12:7, these are the kings of the land which Yahushua and the children of Israel smote beyond the Jordan on the west. Okay, and we saw the list of the kings, and we saw from that, this is how our deliverance from our enemies should look, that we should overcome sin in our lives, that we should capture it, that we should then smite it with the edge of the sword. Joshua 14:1-2 says, Now these, the children of Yisrael, inherited in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest and Yahushua, son of Nun, and the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel caused them to inherit. And their inheritance was by lot. So when they came into the land, they divided the land to them by lot. In Ezekiel 47, when we have come into the land, this is the prophecy. You shall divide this land among yourselves according to the tribes of Israel, and it shall be that you divide it by lot, just as they did when they came in. They divided the land to themselves by lot. It will be the same for us, as an inheritance for yourselves, and for the strangers who sojourn in your midst, who bear children among you. They shall be to you as native born among the children of Israel. With you they have an inheritance in the midst of the tribes of Israel. Joshua 21:43-45 says, Thus Yahovah gave to Israel all the land of which he had sworn to give their fathers, and they took possession of it, and they dwelt in it. And Yahovah gave them rest all around, according to all that he had sworn to their fathers, and not a man of all their enemies stood against them. Same is promised to us. Yahovah gave all of their enemies into their hand, and not a word of any of the good word, okay, for us, any of the gospel, any of the good news, any of the glad tidings, which Yahovah had spoken to the house of Israel, not a word of it failed, all came in. The same is true for us. Isaiah 65:17-24, For look, I'm creating new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered, nor come to heart, but be glad and rejoice forever in what I create. For look, I create in Jerusalem a rejoicing, and her people a joy. And I shall rejoice in Jerusalem, and shall joy in my people, and let the voice of weeping no more be heard in her, nor the voice of crying. No more is an infant from there going to live but a few days, nor an old man who does not complete his days. For the youth dies 100 years old, but the sinner being 100 years old shall be lightly esteemed. And they shall build houses and inhabit them, plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. For the days of my people are going to be as the days of a tree, and my chosen ones outlive the work of their hands. They shall not labor in vain, nor bring forth children in trouble, for they are the seed of the blessed of Yahovah, and their offspring with them. We shall have rest when we dwell in the land. It shall be that before they call, I answer, and while they are still speaking, I hear, I Shema. Promise from the beginning of the book of Isaiah. It shall be in the latter days, this is in the millennium, that the mountain of the house of Yahovah is established on the top of the mountains and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow to it. Many people shall come and say, Come and let us go up to the mountain of Yahovah, to the house of the Elohim of Yaakov, and let him teach us his ways, and let us walk in his paths. For out of Zion comes forth the Torah, and the word of Yahovah from Jerusalem. And he shall judge between the nations, and shall reprove many peoples, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither teach battle anymore. And all of this might sound fantastic, but Yahovah has done many things in the past, many supernatural works, so we know that he is able to do those things that he promises. Romans 10:1-13. Truly, my brothers, my heart's desire and prayer to Elohim for Israel is for deliverance, okay, for salvation, for them to be rescued from these enemies that they have. For I bear them witness that they have a zeal for Elohim, but not according to knowledge. For not knowing the righteousness of Elohim, seeking to establish their own righteousness, they did not subject themselves to the righteousness of Elohim. Just like those people who came when they left, the bread was hot and they thought they had all they needed for the journey, but when they arrived, the bread was dry. Okay? Not knowing the righteousness of Elohim, they seek to establish their own righteousness. So Paul's prayer, his desire towards them, is that they would have deliverance. So just having a zeal for Elohim but in not being according to a knowledge of who he is, it being according to trying to establish your own righteousness is not enough. For Messiah is the goal of the Torah unto righteousness to everyone who believes. For Moshe writes about the righteousness which is of the Torah. The man who does these shall live by them. And the righteousness of belief speaks in this way. Do not say in your heart, who shall ascend into the heavens? That is to bring Messiah down. Or who shall descend into the abyss? That is to bring Messiah up from the dead. But what does it say? The word is near you, in your mouth and in your heart. That is the word of belief, which we are proclaiming. Is of course quoting Deuteronomy 30, where it says that the word will be close to you so that you will do it. It will be in your heart so that you do the word. And that's what Paul says. That's the word of belief that we're proclaiming, that the word would be in your heart so that you do it. That's what belief is. That's what's being asked for. That if you confess with your mouth the Master Yeshua, believe in your heart that Elohim has raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. For with the heart one believes unto righteousness, and one confesses with the mouth, and so is saved. Because Scripture says, whoever puts his trust in him shall not be put to shame. Because there is no distinction between Yehudite and Greek, for the same Master of all is rich to all those calling upon him. For everyone who calls on the name of Yehovah shall be saved. Not a word, the good word which Yehovah had spoken to the house of Israel failed. None of that. And all of that, as we've looked at, that is the true gospel. That is the full gospel. Not the wishy-washy gospel that you learn about in Christian churches where they'll just say, all you have to do is believe that Yeshua died, he was buried, and he rose the third day, and you will be saved. There's a much fuller, much broader context to it. Shall we pray? Father, we thank you for the good news. We thank you that you've shown us time and again in your word and in our lives that you are able to do what you promised, that you have mastery over the earth, that everything is subject to you and that you can do what you will. Thank you, Father, that you've made such amazing promises to us. Those things that we know that you can do, that they're so incredible, and that we get to share in that inheritance and to live with you and to achieve that by walking in your word, which is amazing in itself. Thank you for the incredible gifts that you've given us. Thank you for your spirit and for your word. Thank you for today, that we can afflict our souls before you and that we can show that we are submitted to you. And thank you that it's so incredible to be submitted to you. Thank you that you are so incredible. The promises are so amazing and that we can look forward to them in belief. Thank you, Father.